Hey everyone, CWD Music Reviews here. I am CWD, and this is going to be another addition to the segment N.E.T, Not Enough Time, where pretty much I go through a good chunk of records that unfortunately I haven't really had a chance to review, but I have listened to somewhat and have these little brief opinions on them. Before we get started though, I do want to apologize for the lack of activity on the channel. Work and school and everything else in between has been pretty much getting at me as of late, and unfortunately it's been gnawing at time I could spend on editing reviews, because I still have been recording album reviews. On that note, try to expect a good chunk of activity over the weekend for the channel. This sudden burst before hopefully I get the channel right back on track on a regular basis, or a semi-regular basis at least. So on that note, let's get this on the road. For a debut album, this is actually really cohesive, albeit incredibly one-dimensional. I do hope that Sid does quite a bit of evolving, or at least does a little bit of dynamic and compositional variation to what it is she does, because I do like this album quite a bit. It's just that the brevity makes it feel like it's just in one ear and then out the other within the course of 38 minutes. There's not really a lot of things about the tracks aside from the fact that Sid is really charismatic over her own instrumentals. This was okay. I didn't really find much of anything interesting about it. I did like the few tracks where there was quite a bit of progression to it, but at the end of the day, this is just another reverb-heavy, kind of sugary-ish indie rock, surf rock album that you'll want to listen to if you're into that sort of thing, but it's not really a album that is going to blow you away or anything. I said this once, and I'll say it again. How many albums of this guy am I going to listen to before he finally puts out an album I legitimately like? I fucks with Hendrix a little bit, but these are still projects that are just not good to me. If you're a fan of the Melvins, La Butcherettes, Mars Volta, or At the Drive-In, you're going to want to check this out because Omar is in it, Buzz Osborne is in it, Terry Genderbender is in it. They do not slouch around with this thing, and it definitely showcases a fusion of these respective sounds. It doesn't really come together as like its own standalone hybrid, but these are still really good songs if you're into this really heavy, dirty, garage rock, kind of sort of progressive rock sound that they go for. I wanted to review this thing so badly. I really did. It was one of my most anticipated records of the year. I didn't care for Universal Themes, and I certainly didn't care for that Jeju Sun Kim Moon collab, if you watched my review for that. But Benji was still a really good album. Mark Kozelek is a very capable singer-songwriter. And given the fact that this is the first album as only Sun Kim Moon in almost 2 years, I really wanted to see this improvement or this refinement of this postmodern-ish thing that Mark Kozelek was going for lyrically, and this whole lengthy kind of progressive instrumentalism that Sun Kim Moon did on Universal Themes as well, and even some moments on that Sun Kim Moon Jeju. I was really curious as to what he was going to do with that. The thing is, and I'm probably going to get hate for this, I don't love it. I think it's just decent. Every time I found something that I liked about the album, consequentially there ended up being something that I just didn't care all that much for, just didn't like about the album. For one, I do like how conceptual this album is, but the concept is not that fleshed out or that particularly intricate that it makes me want to keep myself engaged throughout the course of the album. I like the instrumentals, but they don't stand on its own 2 feet for the most part throughout the course of the 7-minute, 8-minute, 10-minute runtimes these tracks have. And I actually do like the stream of consciousness no theme whatsoever lyricism that Mark Kozelek takes on this album. But the thing is, I have to force myself to get into that mentality just to like a good chunk of what he's talking about. Because if you're not focusing in on what Mark Kozelek is talking about from beginning to end, you're not going to maybe understand the point of a good chunk of the tracks, especially since the instrumentals only do so much for these songs. I mean, hell, there's an entire song where he talks about going to this hotel, trying to figure out if someone was actually a murderer there, and the 5 to 6 minutes on the track is pretty much spent doing that, and eventually he gets in the car with his girlfriend and goes off somewhere else. If you're not paying attention to the whole track, if you're not like constantly on the edge of your seat listening to what Mark Kozelek is trying to say, you're gonna get lost, and not in a good way, and that's what I can't stand. This thing is 2 hours long. 2 hours long. Universal Themes was about 70 something minutes, if I remember correctly. At least over an hour. Jesu Sun Kill Moon was 80, and now Mark thinks that he can put out an entire album that's 2 hours long and expect it to go incredibly well. Some people love it, I don't know why, but me personally, no, I don't love this thing. I just think it's pretty decent. It's definitely a step in the right direction from what Universal Themes and that Jesu Sun Kill Moon album was, albeit there is another collab of that type on the way in May, I believe, and I will try to listen to that. But this is not that great to me. This is not the Mark Kozelek or Sun Kill Moon that I was enamored with when I heard Benji, and maybe a couple of other records in the past. This is pretty much an obligatory statement saying that good country exists, and this is one of these albums. It's pretty much down home, albeit particularly one-dimensional. Most of the tracks here don't really stand on their own 2 feet, like it all sounds kind of homogenous from beginning to end. But if you are looking for good country, if you really dislike all the poppy mainstream country that's dominating the charts right now, then you're definitely going to want to give this a try. It's no Sturgill Simpson, but you'll definitely get something out of it for sure. I didn't really hop on to Ryan Adams, like, at all. But all of a sudden I heard so many people praise this thing as like this really heartbreaking and really emotionally moving breakup album. And a breakup album it is indeed, but I didn't really find much of anything that emotionally stirring about it. It just sounds like Ryan Adams seems to have a nice fetish for the 80s. If you're into that kind of thing, and if you are a diehard Ryan Adams fan, then yeah, give this a try. But me personally, I didn't really see that much that's interesting about it. This was an anticipated release for the month, of course, and as well as the year, since I did like that Red Room Angel album thing. I can't remember the exact album title off the top of my head. And I did like how they were able to take Nina Simone songs and warp them into a post-punk kind of thing. And I did find it pretty interesting how they were able to reimagine the soundtrack for Twin Peaks. Xiu Xiu is definitely a band you need to pay attention to if you like experimental rock, post-punk, noise rock. But with this album in particular, they're definitely putting out something relatively solid. It's just that for whatever reason I'm not finding myself completely enamored by what it is Jamie Stewart and company are doing. There's just something about this that tells me that this is just another Xiu Xiu album, and that's cool and all, but that's not why I was a fan of Xiu Xiu. They were doing particularly vast and out there things for me, and now that they're doing this, while yeah, it's definitely a solid release and people are probably going to love it more than I do, this wasn't really one for the books. I was interested to see if the frontman of N.E.T could hold a solo album on his own, and unfortunately, while this is definitely not bad, it's definitely pretty decent and pretty okay, there's a lot lacking in what it is Tim Darcy is doing. It kind of sounds like a hodgepodge of different indie rock, experimental rock ideas that have been done before. You got little slivers of Strokes, Joy Division, maybe some Sigur Rós thrown in there, and this all happens over the course of like 35 minutes. It's brief, it's okay. If you're like a huge hot fan, you're gonna want to try it out. So those are my thoughts on albums I didn't get a chance to listen to over the past month. What did you think of any of these? Did you like any of them? Did you dislike any of them? What are some releases that I should give a try, and what did you think of those? This is CWD Music Reviews here, signing off.